He is David Mazaris. And what's so significant about him? Well, a few things. So for one, his education, just like some of the good guys and the bad guys, right? He comes from MIT. And you also have to keep in mind that he is a professor over at Stanford University. So that's pretty cool. I do like to point at educators in crypto. I myself am a former educator. I never got to do full time, being a professor or anything like that, but I did get to sub as an instructor in the past and so on. So glad to be able to do that or have done that. But I want to share some key insights from him that was shared from the Stellar Development Foundation as of recently. And if anything, why point out some of this stuff? Well, I think it's worth pointing out. So for one, it's kind of cool. If you go to his biography or his site, it's scs.stanford.edu. It comes up with this Professor David Mazaris, if I'm pronouncing that right. He has a little bio and so on. But here it is. Very, very detailed. And I'm not going to get into so much about this and so on, because if anything, you're more interested in Stellar. But just to give you a heads up, Professor of Computer Science at Stanford University, where he leads the Secure Computer Systems Research Group. Wow. He co-directs the Center of Blockchain Research, and he's the Future Digital Currency Initiative. His research interests include operating systems, distributed systems, with a particular focus on security. Interesting. He's also, listen to this, the co-founder of the Stellar Development Foundation. Hence why they probably wanted to highlight him, right? Some of his projects in which he has done, he's collaborated on, includes SFS, which is a self-certifying network file system. Sunder, we covered this in the past, a long time ago. File system that introduced the notion of fork I can't even pronounce that. Zillability. That's not even the right way to pronounce it. And also Demlia, widely used peer-to-peer routing algorithm. So he knows a thing or two because he's seen a thing or two, right? As the saying goes. So I thought I'd point that out. Basically speaking, you got to keep in mind, all right, why point any of this out? Well, before I share this particular video in regards that was recently released from Stellar, you have to keep in mind that when it comes to this particular gentleman, and even Stellar for that matter, Stellar is not proof of stake. Were you aware of that? Stellar actually is what is referred to as a consensus protocol. We've seen other ones like the Hashgraph consensus, right, with Hedera. We know that when it comes to Stellar, they are a decentralized public blockchain that facilitates, of course, cross-border payments, tokenization. It is a form of DLT that allows users to do just that. Send, receive, and trade digital representations of almost basically any form of value, including, of course, cryptocurrencies, commodities, and even securities, which sounds nuts. Stellar, of course, is powered by the Stellar Consensus Protocol, the SCP. Sorry, that was a mouthful. It's a proof of agreement, POA consensus mechanism that was designed to be fast, efficient, and, of course, scalable. SCP is more energy efficient alternative to, of course, proof of work consensus mechanisms. And, of course, we know some of those particular ones. We obviously know that Stellar specializes in tokenization, cross-border payments, and, of course, decentralized finance. Now, jumping into what we have from YouTube. This was reported on the 28th, and it's David Mazaris' stake reputation, not cryptocurrency. I've gone ahead and fast forward to some of the key areas of this video to bring it to you guys. So I'm going to come out of the frame. Let's go ahead and play this. And it's just a few minutes, but man, listen to this for a second. Why would somebody that is a professor from Stanford go through all the trouble of mentioning it? So it's not just because he's part of the Stellar Development Foundation. He makes a very valid point. Were you aware of some of these points? Let's get into this. If you appreciate the coverage, please smash the like. Here we go.
All right. So you basically end up in the situation where it's very tricky to tune the incentives properly in these consensus mechanisms, right? And if you get it wrong, then you can end up with a very costly double redemption attack, right? You could issue like millions of dollars of digital dollars, and then you could face, redemptions for like twice that much because like the blockchain forked, right? So you have the situation where if your token transactions are too valuable for the incentives, then your security is not going to be good enough. And if your token transactions are not valuable enough, then you're going to have kind of excessive fees, right? Because you kind of need to pay these fees to keep people interested in keeping the blockchain secure. And in a way, one way to view this is that part of the problem is that you're basically giving up on a lot of investments that we've made in society in things to kind of try to make the economy work well. So these are things like, reputation, like ownership rights, like the ability to enforce, pen and paper contracts in court, bank regulation stability, right? All that goes out the window when your financial infrastructure is run by a bunch of anonymous people and you don't know who they are, and the only thing keeping it secure are these incentives. So to make this a bit more concrete, let's look at some numbers. There's this great website, crypto51.app, that shows you how much it costs to attack a proof of work blockchain. And you can see it would cost like 1.3 or $5 million an hour to attack Bitcoin, right? So that sounds like a lot, but maybe if you're going to issue like billions of dollars of stable coin on this thing and like have, billions of dollars of volume a day, this actually isn't enough to keep things secure, right? And then as soon as you drop off from Bitcoin, everything else is just like tiny, right? Like tens of thousands of dollars of incentives keeping these blockchains secure. So this should be very scary if you're thinking about issuing a real world asset onto one of these proof of work blockchains. Okay, but maybe proof of work is passé. We're all about proof of stake in 2023. So let's look at some, selection of popular proof of stake blockchains. And here I had to pull data from multiple sources. And unfortunately, realtps.net is down to the first column, the average TPS. Those numbers might be slightly out of date, but this is for kind of order of magnitude to see. And what you can see from this, the first thing that should jump out of this chart is that, an Ethereum, they're collecting like almost $1 billion of transaction fees a year for not that many transactions per second, right? So you're talking about, on average, people are going to pay several dollars per transaction. It goes up and down. Sometimes it's much more. And so that means that kind of like layer one transactions on Ethereum are just way too expensive for many, many applications that you could think of. So if you look at the other extreme, Algorand is a blockchain, really high quality blockchain, like very nice proof of work, proof of stake algorithm, right? And it also has like, sort of high quality tooling. People like to develop for it. And low fees right now. But unfortunately, Algorand has about $211 million staked on it. And you can start seriously messing with a proof of stake blockchain when you have like more than a third of the stake. So like around, if you had $100 million of algo, you could start seriously messing with transactions on there. And of course, you could potentially lever up and get $100 million of algo by like, putting maybe 10% down and like borrowing the rest. So for basically $10 million, you can start to mess with people. And so that should make you really scared about issuing, say, like $1 billion stable coin on top of Algorand, right? And there's other things that make this worse, like liquid staking might give you a way to like get other people to kind of lend their stake to you, and things like shorting and derivatives would allow you to maybe like profit if you tank the value of Algorand because you're attacking the system and so on. So all that should be kind of scary. So there's something else that's kind of troubling here, which is look at the difference between the fees that are being collected on a yearly basis and the incentives that are being paid out to validators, right? So that's anywhere from like 2x for Ethereum to 100x or more for some of these chains. That gap basically represents the fact that cryptocurrency speculators are subsidizing the network, right? Many times over compared to the fees that are being collected. So again, that's not going to be sustainable in the long run, right? So of course, if you look at Stellar, my blockchain, things look different, right? Because you're not staking anything other than your reputation. We don't pay out any incentives to the validators, and not coincidentally, it has the lowest fees of pretty much any public blockchain out there, often by many orders of magnitude.
All right, so the point was the difference, clear-cut differences when it comes to Stellar and the other ones are out there. He even gave praise in regards to Algorand, and so on, right? I want to show you some recent news that is from Stellar to kind of just tie everything in together before we wrap things up. And basically, let's take you to there. This is from actually Stellar, right? So for one, let's pull this up. And like it says, right from Stellar.org, what's it say? It says that they just dropped a practical framework for decentralization. Dive into the shift, redefine trust in blockchain with SDF's Leslie Shavkin. Now, this was reported earlier today, and I will take you over to this. And basically, here it is. And it's a big piece, but the point is, they talk about this whole thing of like framework, and we all know that we have to have the proper framework to get to, regulatory framework where you get that clarity, as the saying goes. But this whole thing of like a practical framework for decentralization is actually something that they wrote up, if you will. It's a policy, like it says, team at the Stellar Development Foundation to set out and address that question. I apologize. It says a decentralized system rules govern, or I should say, the rules govern how various components work together to achieve a common goal. Yes, true. These components, whether they are computers, blockchain networks, community members, so on and so forth, you have to have a structure, a governance structure for all this. And it has to work independently, but collectively with the need for a central authority, whether people want to agree that and so on. I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like what Martin Hargreaves point out in regards to quants. If you watch that particular coverage, he's talking about, we want our elected officials to do the right thing and embrace the right types of things and so on, do their jobs. I mean, I understand there's a balance of, big government and small government and so on. I'll try to get into political discussion, but you have to keep in mind, like it says, this concept is already woven into our lives. The internet operates as a decentralized communications network. True, ensuring resilience and continuity. At the end of the day, I mean, like Gilbert Verdian was talking about, we don't want any more cases of siloed gardens of like Web 1. Your CompuServes can't talk to your AOLs and, your all the other old school ones if you're around during that time. Decentralized systems, on the other hand, offer a operational resilience, eliminating the risk of a single point of failure, reducing vulnerabilities to attacks. Very, very true. Decentralization, therefore, challenges the traditional approach to regulation. And this is where we're starting to see things finally come together. You see a focus on oversight of centralized actors and intermediaries, and it, of course, forces us to rethink how we can safeguard consumers, uphold market integrity, mitigate systemic risk. Now, regards to this whole thing about policymakers, regulators globally are grappling what decentralization means and how to measure it. They have this whole thing of a realistic approach, and I do like this terminology, of how to emphasize the need for a flexible framework that can accommodate the quickly evolving blockchain industry. The framework evaluates a network structure, ability to resist failures, and approach a decision-making and power distribution. So what is this exactly all about? Well, there's a lot. But you like the idea that there's new news posted about this. And in essence, like it says, and we're not going to read the full paper, that decentralization is not a mere technological trend, but it's a paradigm shift that touches upon resilience, data integrity, and trust. This, of course, paper that we're not going to get into because it's just too long. You can nerd it out if you want to. Is a meaningful, practical framework to evaluate and understand decentralization and a step towards embracing this transformation and harnessing its potential. And of course, you're welcome to nerd it out, but my thing is this. I look at these things as being a reference for the actual policymakers, so they have a reference that they can go to and educate themselves. At the end of the day, if we want these policymakers on board, they have to have something to reference. This is one of the references. Now, jumping into some of the cool things I want to get into in regards to some of the more of the nitty gritty, if you will. I want you guys to keep in mind that there's I should say more than meets the eye, but in regards to all this, I think it's a big deal to point out some specific things. Okay, so for one, I did see over on the Stellar Development Foundation, you have this. And I should say Stellar Development Foundation. It comes straight from Stellar, and then of course straight from Sorbonne Official. Now, we have reported numerous times about the whole big thing of Sorbonne, but this is today. And like it says, last call for this round of Stellar Community Fund. If you're building something cool on Stellar, be sure to get your submission done by December 3rd. Go, go, go. Now, we're not devs. We know we're not devs. And if anything, there might be some people who are like, man, why even share this, Max? It's a nothing burger. It's not a nothing burger. The reason why you want to share this to the public and get the news out and so on is because this whole notion of Sorbonne. Sorbonne's going to go live. When will it go live? Everybody's been asking that. It's going to be at the end of the year or so on. Is there anything specific? Not really. But this hints that there's deadlines coming up. And when you see that these devs got to come up with a submission by December 3rd, which is, let's face it, guys, 3 days after tomorrow, that is worth pointing out. Now, why so? Well, taking you over to, for instance, what we have, it goes into this thing called Community Fund in regards to Stellar. Turn ideas into impact. It says request awards up to $100,000 worth of XLM. I don't know about you, but man, I would, that sounds good to me. But yeah, turn 100K worth of XLM for building impactful projects on Sorbonne and Stellar. Ooh. Strengthen the ecosystems, infrastructure, and tooling. Lead the next way of DeFi applications. You know, when it comes to dApps, I think Sorbonne is really going to be the key thing to get done because this is the premier smart contract platform built on Stellar. And like it says, build solutions to those who need it the most. At the end of the day, what kind of applications are they building? You know, is it real world applications that are going to make a difference? Or is it just a bunch of nonsense? No, I think it's real world applications that are going to make a difference. What are some examples we've seen? Well, not necessarily Sorbonne, but we've seen other examples of applications built on Stellar. Like, for instance, we saw the whole thing of, which was a big deal, Wisdom Tree. That app, being able to, you know, pay bills and do all sorts of other things. And the connection to Stellar, I think, is still a very big deal. We gave you other examples not that long ago, you know, and there's going to be continuously be more and more examples. So it says submit your project, right? If you're a dev and so on. It's got all this info about it. But my key thing for you guys is, you know, the price of Stellar as we speak. I mean, when I get more into this, I do look at, for instance, let me just pull up this page again real quick. Are you even aware, even though the market is up, that we have, you know, 1.44 trillion overall crypto market cap, right? This increase. And if anything, it might go even higher. But where is Stellar? Well, Stellar is sitting at 24th. And let's just be honest, still a bargain. You know, my last bag, I came in at like 7 or 8 cents. I'm not in the profits because when I originally got into Stellar, I got into it, I think, late 2021, early 2022. It was officially my first of the ISO coins. I didn't even know what ISO was at that point, right? Had to learn, just like you, me, and everybody else. But my point is that I'll eventually be into the profits. And I also recognize Stellar as still an absolute buy because Sorbonne's coming up. And we should see some price shock. You know, I could be wrong. I'm leaning towards, if you have 100 plus, you know, projects that are going to be built, you know, as the saying goes, flip of the switch, if you will, going live in regards to that switch sometime at the end of the month before the new year, that's worth pointing out. This price of right under 12 cents. I mean, come on. All they need is like a handful, if that, of some premier standout quality projects. Not to say that not all of them aren't going to be, but built on, you know, Stellar from Sorbonne. That's going to be game changer. And I thought I would point that out at least to you guys, and basically glad to, you know, do that.